I would suggest one thing. We are in a global economy, which bothers me a great deal, in the sense that partially is our fault of lack of productivity. We're not a producing nation as we were in the past. So I would suggest for young people to help prepare them for the global economy, of course, is geography. I mean, how many really are studying geography today? The history, you know, about bird missionary. I would study also the proximity to countries through the geography, how far away we are, and really what the markets are. That all will be a part of it. And then the last one I'd like to suggest to every class. I am not a person that can really understand languages, but I really would emphasize languages really early on, and then actually kindergarten. I'm not going to go below that, but kindergarten. I would suggest we ought to also get more students involved. I love the Rotary Club exchange program. I think we can see that there's other people around and what they do and where they're going. And again, I'd like to suggest another thing. If we have classes that teach buying groceries and clothes and stuff and find out where everything comes from, so a student understands that. And I think that would be very beneficial early on, so they'd understand where they are, proximity to the rest of the world, and the history of it, and learn the languages, and then you have the student prepared.
Thank you.
And with our next question, we'll start with Liz. As a congressional delegate, you will be a leader for our state and nation. How do you see yourself being a positive role model for our students and showing that through action?
Well, Senator Stevens, as many of you know, has 6 children and I think 11 or 12 grandchildren. And so he has, in fact, brought these children through the education system. I believe that he thinks that by passing good legislation, good responsible legislation, by serving his state, by bringing things to Alaska that it has not previously had, that it needs as one of the newer states, that he is setting an example for future generations of students.
Mark?
That's actually an interesting question. I think it's a very good question. You know, in all my life in public service, I have ensured or made possible opportunities for young people to be engaged in many of the things I do. You know, just as mayor, for example, we have youth internship programs that are ongoing throughout our city government. When I did my transition team, when I became mayor in 2003, I made sure youth was on every single one of those transition teams. Boards and commissions that I appoint people to have young people on those boards and commissions. The youngest actually was 13 years old. I remember a point where I didn't really know her. I saw her in an event in a hotel. She was a presenter. And I said, I don't know what her story is, but I love it. I like what she has to say because she had the command of the audience, which was 600 adults at an evening event. I thought, if she can do that, she can surely be on a board and commission. She has turned out to be this incredible woman who just leads other young people. I think part of our job as an elected official, a public policy maker, is engaging, not just coming to fill out paperwork and file files, but actually take meaningful roles in helping make a result in the work that we do. I know when I was on the Anchorage Assembly, I put together a plan. It was back in 1997 called Anchorage 2000. And I had young youth interns help me put it together. They were the authors of this to push us, to dream into the future where we should go. I think that's part of the role we have. And also, not be afraid to let young people kind of take charge, be in charge of things. I know when I helped enlarge the Anchorage Youth Court, a lot of adults said they're never going to be able to be successful. Well, the Anchorage Youth Court that we have today in this city is known around the country as a national model. Young people being peers to other young people, helping them get on the right track. So we have to be willing to take a little risk, be willing to say to young people, it's your opportunity, it's really going to be your future. Instead of just saying what we always say as politicians, you know, youth is our future, actually let them help plan it. Let them be part of it, and not be afraid of failure and success that may come out of it. And that's what I think we need to do as elected officials. That's what I intend to do.
Thank you. Don?
Well, I'm glad Mark said the word young 10 times. I like that.
The youngest one here.
You know, we are role models. And one of the proudest moments of my life is having young people come up to me and say, you know, how do you become a congressman? That makes me very proud. They want to be a congressman. I think the problem that everybody has at this table is a lot of times our role models are being destroyed by the desire to get elected. I don't like those junkyard dog ads that are running against Senator Stevens right now on behalf of Mark. I don't like those junkyard ads that are running against me. That destroys role model making for the younger people. They say, oh, they're rotten politicians, I don't want anything to do with it. I think that's part of the responsibility of media and the responsibility of you as educators to say, listen, we have to have elected officials. And we ought to recognize what they can do. And if they do it correctly, and I believe they don't do it correctly, they're not reelected. And so that's one of the things I'd suggest. I have to tell you, we run this, I've been running this now, this is my 21st election. And we have these demographic layouts. 18 to 25, 25 to 45, 45 to 65, 65 to on. The amazing thing about that, guess where my weakest point is? It's not the 18 to 25, it's the 65 and on. The 18 to 25 think of me as a congressman and they support me. So I'm doing something right as a role model.
Thank you. Bob?
Well, Congress is at its record low rating, 10% approve of what Congress is doing. I have a two-part joke for you. Listen carefully, you're educators. If pro is the opposite of con, what's the opposite of progress? Second part, if con is the opposite of pro, what's the opposite of constitution? This is because we have totally and utterly ignored the Constitution. The 10th Amendment asks for a more humble government. It's not an option. I'm going to have to ask Mark and Don and Senator Stevens isn't here. How do you reconcile with taking the oath of office and pretending the 10th Amendment isn't there? It says it's few and defined. It says very clearly you can only do the things that are listed in Article 8. We are the authors of every one of our problems. And Congress just keeps going on. The two parties are the left and right wing of the same bird of prey. My job, and this is how I hope to gain some sort of respect, is to bring the federal government into compliance with the Constitution. To accept it's not isolationism, it's called humility. It is Wilsonian idealism which gave us this global business. The war to make the world safe for democracy, and the war to end wars. Now that was in 1917, and as we all know, we've hardly had any wars since then, and the whole world is democratic. So it is the utter humility that I have to tell these guys, the 21st century is not going to be the century of more government. That century's over. It's still got some momentum. But the Soviet Union broke up because it got too big. It just became too tyrannical. And every single regulation and every single tax that's laid upon us is cracking our economy, and it's going to lead us into utter ruination.
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with Mark. Being a representative of the citizens of Alaska, what will you do to protect the rights of our citizens as